In this video, we'll examine the policies a government can use to correct or reduce unemployment. These include both demand-side and supply-side measures. We'll then evaluate the effectiveness of the policies presented. First, we'll start with expansionary policies. Expansionary or reflationary monetary or fiscal policies aim to decrease unemployment by increasing aggregate demand. An increase in aggregate demand will typically result in an increase in output. Since more workers are needed to produce goods and services, firms increase hiring and unemployment will fall. A government typically has two options here: monetary and fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policies are up first. These include decreased taxation and increased government spending. The government can choose to lower either direct or indirect taxes or both. Direct taxes include income and corporation tax. By reducing individual income taxes and corporation tax, the government is trying to boost spending. A decrease in income tax increases disposable income and thus boosts consumer spending, driving up the demand for goods and services and thus reducing unemployment. Decreasing corporation tax allows firms to keep more of their profits and enables them to use this to expand their business and potentially increase hiring. To increase spending, the government could also reduce indirect taxes such as VAT. VAT may be lowered to encourage spending. If it's reduced, the decreased price of goods and services should attract consumers and thus increase the sale of goods and services. An increase in government spending increases the G component of aggregate demand. To counter the job losses from the recession of 2008 to 2009, the American government increased spending on infrastructure projects in part to create jobs and also to save existing ones. The spending on the creation and maintenance of such jobs provides income to those who are out of work and supports those who were potentially at risk for losing their jobs. This will have a multiplier effect throughout an economy that will increase spending output and further increase employment as well. Next up are expansionary monetary policies. These include decreasing the interest rate, increasing the money supply, and depreciating or devaluing the currency. The ultimate aim, once again, is to boost spending through either consumption or investment or net exports and increase aggregate demand. Doing so should increase output and reduce unemployment. By decreasing the interest rate, it becomes cheaper for households and firms to borrow, potentially increasing the level of consumption and investment taking place. A lower interest rate reduces the incentive to save for households, thus promoting consumer spending. It also reduces the value of interest-adjusted debt repayments, which frees up income for consumers and profits for firms. Another monetary policy tool would be to increase the money supply. The central bank can increase a country's money supply with the aim to increase spending throughout the economy. They can print more money, purchase bonds from commercial banks, or reduce the reserve ratio for banks. All of these would potentially have the same effect, to allow banks to increase lending, which can mean higher levels of borrowing and spending and thus increased economic activity. The third tool of monetary policy is currency depreciation or devaluation. If the government operates a freely floating exchange rate, it is a depreciation. If they operate a fixed exchange rate, it would be considered a devaluation. A government may attempt to depreciate or devalue its currency to boost its exports or the net export component of aggregate demand. A depreciated or devalued currency makes imports relatively more expensive to domestic buyers and exports relatively cheaper to foreign buyers. This could potentially increase the volume of exports while reducing the volume of imports. The difference in the two values is the value of net exports. A rise in net exports could increase the output of domestic firms, resulting in job gains and increased incomes. With all of this said, it's important to remember these policies are not bulletproof. When you propose a solution, be prepared to evaluate its effectiveness. You can do so like this. There are several key factors that can limit or enhance the effectiveness of expansionary policies. These include the value of the multiplier. If the value of the multiplier is larger, or if the marginal propensity to save is lower, then a smaller amount of increased spending is needed to achieve a set goal. If the multiplier is smaller, then a greater initial change in spending will have to be accomplished. Second is the size of the initial change. With an output gap coupled with the multiplier effect, we have to consider the size of the initial change. Will it be significant enough to achieve the outcome we are pursuing? Third is the inflation trade-off. If the economy is operating on its upward sloping portion of the long-run aggregate supply curve, or it's at full employment, further increases in output and spending will result in inflation. However, if the economy is operating along the horizontal portion of the long-run aggregate supply curve, where there is significant spare capacity, then output and employment can be increased without inflationary pressure. Fourth is business and consumer confidence. Any expansionary policy is subject to the level of consumer and business confidence. If expansionary policies are pursued, but consumers and businesses are still uncertain about the future state of the economy, monetary and fiscal changes may be of limited effectiveness. In times of low confidence, business and consumers are more likely to hold cash regardless of how low interest rates and taxes are. And finally, there's exchange rate sensitivity. The overall effectiveness of depreciating or devaluing a currency to boost trade ultimately depends upon how elastic the demand for exports and imports are. The more sensitive trade is to exchange rate fluctuations, the more likely weakening the currency is going to have the intended effect. Now let's take a look at supply-side policies. Ultimately, the focus of supply-side policies is to increase the level of potential output of an economy. This can be done by reducing the natural rate of unemployment, by reducing structural unemployment, and increasing the size of the labor force. This can be accomplished in a variety of ways, including but not limited to policies to improve the mobility of labor, training and education for the unemployed, for example. Whether the issue is of geographical or occupational immobility of labor, any policy solution that would address either one would benefit an economy. For example, training and education could help workers gain the skills necessary to take on new jobs, or providing access to low-cost urban housing might encourage people to move to high cost of living areas and take up work there. Reducing unemployment benefits to incentivize work, well, this could encourage people to get back to work faster and spend less time between jobs. And then third is reducing the rate of tax to increase the incentive to work. This could bring people into the labor force who were previously not a part of it, and also might encourage those who are out of work to take jobs quicker due to the increased benefits of working. All right, once again, we have to remember that no government policy serves as a magic bullet. Training and education programs are costly and may be longer-term solutions. They don't address unemployment immediately, typically. On top of this, the quality of training must be high, otherwise the value to job seekers will be limited. Second, cutting unemployment benefits might incentivize some to go back to work, but others it might push into poverty. Reducing income taxes might increase inequality as the rich become richer and the gap between rich and poor widens. And finally, providing affordable housing is not typically a short-term possibility and can also be quite costly. There will always be an opportunity cost to government expenditure in whatever form it takes. All right. By now, you should have a strong understanding of how each of these policies can be used to reduce unemployment, as well as the potential limitations of each. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and let's answer them together. That's us done for now, and I will see you in the next one.